講到營銷同埋電商，我哋究竟係應該追潮流，定係建立一套長線增長嘅 infrastructure 呢？今集我哋請到 Anymind Group 大中華區常務董事 Ben Chien。Anymind 係一間結合咗營銷科技、電商營運同埋 creator marketing 嘅科技公司，長期喺前線幫品牌打通由內容去到轉化嘅供應鏈。今集 Marketing Pulse and E-Tailing Pulse Podcast 就同你一齊嚟揾專家上堂。Good morning, Ben.
Thank you, Rudy. Thank you for having me.
Ben, you have been in this industry for how many years?
About 25.
25 years. Wow.
Right.
Tell us more about Anymind. I found that there's many branding under Anymind Group. You know, any X, any tech, any live, any logistic, so many type of stuff. Tell us more. Educate me. What is Anymind?
So yes, Anymind is an AI native technology company. So we focus on providing two main things. One is helping brands on commerce, and another one is helping partners in order to grow their monetization and to attract the right audience.
Anymind does a lot of cross-border marketing support for your clients these days. Yes. So as a regional leader operating in the intersection of technology, commerce, marketing, advertising, how do you define technology for marketing and e-commerce today?
Right. So technology, the first thing is AI native. That's the first thing that comes to my mind these days. And for particularly technology for marketing and commerce, I would think the first what come to mind would be content efficiency. So what I meant by content efficiency is content is what you write and you want to speak to your audience. That's the type of content. For example, a feed on a social media.
Yes.
And efficiency would be how effective it is to convert your audience into actual sales or the influence that you want to put to whatever work that you want to do in this society. For example, if you go to social media, first you have to pick what are some of the key trends. Because if it's on trend, then it goes viral a lot easier, and which means that that's probably part of your goal is to make people notice what you want to say. And you probably also want to analyze your audience. You want to analyze the content that how did it engage with the audience in the past. So in the future, or what you're trying to do now, it will probably be more effective. So it all comes down to a bunch of analysis, and these analysis would be much easier to do if you leverage AI, because it's just so many different points of data, millions of points of data. If you combine all of those and leveraging AI tools to do, then your content will be much more effective and efficient in targeting the right audience and creating the correct voice. So that's how I would describe the technology.
So when these days a lot of people using AI tools to create content, will it become homogeneous?
It depends on how you use the different type of AI tools and how you do your research. It still have to do with, I guess, different leaders probably have different mindsets of how AI would be useful in what type of situation, in what part of the process, for example. I don't think, just take an example. Everyone will prompt AI differently. Yeah. That will generate very different results. It's almost like how you do research, how you interpret things very differently. So all the answers and actions will be different. So I don't think it will be very generic.
How do you see like influencers leveraging AI for creating their content?
First thing, as earlier mentioned, I believe the research of the trends and how their audience engage with maybe other creators. So these are the type of research that you can truly leverage AI to do before you find the right trend and the right content and the right tone to engage with your audience. So if you don't do that and just go with the flow, then you can still create your own niche, your own voice and things like that. But if you want to go one step up, you want to accelerate your growth, I would imagine creators can leverage AI a lot more in order to find things that would create a lot more buzz with a much less time.
Is it also part of one of the territories Anymind is helping influencers?
Yes, we do. We do two main things. I guess our clients are mainly our brands, but our brands needs and requires the use of our creators in order to reach the right audience for their. So this is sort of a three-way kind of relationship. So the way that we help them, we will see it as we will find the right demand, as creators are more of the supply. So we will find the demand in order to match up with the right supply. But we will use different AI solutions to help to find the right match. If we are successful in doing that, we will find the correct brands that reflect naturally with their audience, so that we don't have to sort of very difficultly help creators to find new niche of audience. So we will do what's more natural and leverage the right thing.
We have been, like in the marketing world, we have been talking about consumer journeys. How do you see consumer journey?
We are all exposed to tons and tons of random feeds every day, but social platforms have very effective algorithms to find everyone's needs. I use needs not as much as the interest and things like that, because it's so broad of a subject. So I would probably describe as these days, social media is very good at finding everyone's needs, like what we're looking for, what kind of problem do I have, what do I spend most of my time actually seeking. Seeking, I use the word seeking because I need something. So I'm seeking for advice, answers, things like that. I think consumers these days are spoon-fed a lot of things that appeal to them so much because it solves their problem directly. The other day, I was just browsing randomly, and then I saw someone dissecting or pulling out an engine, sampling an engine. And the engine happened to belong to a car that I really like. It's a vintage BMW. How do they know this? Because I've probably been looking at and stopping at the feeds, even when I'm browsing, when I'm just scrolling, I would imagine very much so, they would detect how much time you dwell on things without even clicking on it. It's like when you do a search, you can just look at the results or sometimes the AI mode without even clicking on it. It's good and bad, but sometimes you get what you're looking for.
Yeah, I think I remember I read a blog, the tech blog about the new media scene. Click is no longer that as important.
Correct.
What is your point of view on this?
I believe so, because I also don't click as many times per day as before, because a lot of things you just want to know the service. You don't really need to know the exact answer, not the technical answers. Sometimes you want to say, okay, is this color better than that color if you're wearing something like that? There's never a right or wrong answer. It's just a guidance. If you know nothing about something, even a very simple suggestion would totally serve the purpose at the moment, because you have so many other things to do, so you don't really have time. Yeah, so I definitely think that, the zero click, it's a trend.
As a marketer, what metrics should I pay attention to? Yes.
I guess on social, in the past, I guess we would look at engagement engagement rates. It's almost like in 1.0 you look at click-through rate and then you look at engagement rate. But nowadays I would probably look at a little bit more of the conversion sales side of things. I believe conversions are very important. And these conversions doesn't necessarily mean buying something. It could be doing something that a brand would deem very engaging to their core value. So conversions could be anything.
So we are seeing the marketing, commerce, and creator economy converge more and more tightly together.
Yes.
What structural shift are driving this conversion?
And in the past, or not even that far past, or even sometimes currently, people would see creators as brand ambassadors, like a spokesperson. Say, I mean, these have been going on for so long. It's still going on now. It will go on for a long time. If it's purely for branding purposes, for associations, things like that. But we see it a little bit more of a almost like a sales channel or distribution infrastructure, if you really want a technical term. But there's much more casual terms. So there are KOL, KOC, KOS. KOS, key opinion sales, would be anyone that is familiar and like the brand and that's able to move products, sell products.
Do they include the sales of
for example, a retail brand?
Yes, absolutely. For example, people in the shopping mall, sales at the counter for any kind of brand, they are probably one of the best KOS there are, because they know and they use and they work for the brand. They have all the reasons to sell this brand or to talk good things about this brand. So, but the only thing is they might not be very influential. They might not have that many followers, or they might not even be online, for example. But these are prime candidates for us to turn them into the KOS, which is what we see as creators. So creators doesn't have to be a star. It doesn't have to be someone famous for something else or exactly in that territory. It could be anyone. So we start small by looking at, okay, how likely is someone who is capable of selling something? And we start small, and the first thing is the people at the counter for the retail. And then we go a little bit further up, people that have maybe thousands or tens of thousands of followers, not that many, but they're probably famous or good at their own territory. And this territory happens to be similar to the territory that our brand also want to appeal to in terms of the audience. So this is, you can kind of see it, every single creator have his own audience. It's almost like every media have their own readers. So this is very, very parallel. So, but these are very niche. So you really need to find quite a lot of these creators in order to scale, because you still need to scale when you do these things. So that's where you need technology to find, mainly AI technology, to find these creators and engage them in a way that appeals to the audience for the brand that they are working with.
Has influence became like part of the distribution infrastructure for a brand these days?
Yes, absolutely. In order to influence these people, first we have to find the right the creator with the audience that is that is sought after by the brands to begin with. This is very similar to in the old days when a brand is looking for media, traditional media, TV media, or offline, online. Every media have the media kit. They have the demographic breakdown, things like that. It's very similar to that. For creators, it's very easy. They can just click on their statistics and you'll see the breakdown on each of the platforms. But the harder part is the social media is very fragmented now. You can go into Facebook, IG, TikTok, depending on industry, depending on geo. You can go to Xiaohongshu, Douyin, and everything else. So each platform has its own demographic, and each platform also have their own way of the media, like the vertical, horizontal videos. Some are text, some are video, some are more graphical. Some requires more authenticity. Some could use a little bit more salesy messaging. So these type of messages are very different from platform to platform. So we really need AI to help us to define what's the best way to engage with that respective platform, so that it resonates more and creates more engagement and conversions.
Interesting. So as for example, as if I were an influencer on selling vinyl, because I'm a vinyl lover, how can I integrate my influence power with my client's e-commerce? For example, I want to sell vinyl for a record company.
Right.
How can I integrate this technically?
Okay. I would imagine that, first, the fact that you like vinyl is probably known. I would imagine Rudy is an expert, and Rudy is also famous in this industry. So you have the authenticity that your audience wants, and brands love that. They will pay a lot for that. I shouldn't say that, but they are willing to transact that way, and that's the reason. The authenticity, the relevancy to the brand and the audience also. I guess the next thing would be the type of message, which is the content. That came back to the content efficiency in the first part. The next part will be which platform will be used. I would imagine that most brands want to engage with all platforms because every platform have all type of audiences, and you just want to find the right audience. So. And so the next things would be to do the research. What type of trends are the hottest now? And in order to leverage those trends, what type of content and what type of messaging, what kind of tone and manner will be used for that particular platform, that trend, and that topic. So once we use AI to do all these research, then we will have the creative and the content in order to maximize the resonance. So that's basically the key.
So it's the whole ecosystem.
Yes, platform-specific content
Platforms.
strategy.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So each platform will have the different.
Some social platforms doesn't even have a e-commerce component to it. And on the reverse, some e-commerce platforms actually have the social element to it as well. So it's quite complex to go through all these steps. For example, a lot of brands would use, let's say, 小红书example to appeal to Chinese consumers, but they might use that traffic to lead it to a Douyin shop in order to do the conversions, or lead it to Taobao or to any other platform.
So it's all integrated with each other.
Yes, yeah, but obviously each platform also, like 小红书, also have its shop. But there's different reasons to use different kind of shops differently, depending on where most of your potential consumers would be on.
So as a brand, what's the advantage to use the native e-commerce platform rather than direct the traffic to my own e-commerce website?
That's a very, very very good question. The data, I guess we would call it the data liquidity. Like how easy is the data to flow from one platform to another platform, from one channel to another channel, for example. So this is very, very important. If you have the entire flow, then you can tell exactly what type of content and what type of audience resonate the most and converts the most effectively. But if you tunnel one traffic to another from a social media platform to an e-commerce platform, some of these data might be lost, or it might come as a very high cost or things like that. So it might not be as efficient. Or so content efficient is not just about the time that you put in it or to analyze it, but also the money that you put in order to, because it's also part of ROI.
Interesting. So back to Hong Kong.
Yes.
What is the status of like social e-commerce in Hong Kong these days?
Okay.
Outbound or like domestically?
I would say e-commerce in general is very fragmented in a way. There are the people that would do very local-ish shopping, and there are ones that will use a lot of international or Chinese media platforms or e-commerce platforms. I think the choice is definitely everywhere. So that make it quite difficult for brands sometimes to decide what to do first or next. You probably always want to do things that have the highest bang for the buck first, and then go down from there. But if you think about silo on different platforms, you probably also know that that's probably not the best way to do, because you're by definition missing part of the segments of the audience that you want to reach. So that creates opportunity for people in the industry to provide suggestions and support.
For example, if I'm SME owner, I start a new business to create this designer stuff. Okay,
Yes.
Should I start domestically first, or I should start like put my brand overseas or cross border?
I think that would probably require a bit of research in order to do that. I would believe that using your existing data to see your client segmentation, that's probably the first bit I would probably do. I would probably also do quite a lot of research on similar brands or on similar merchants in Hong Kong to see who their key clients or distributions are. I think that a lot of these you could potentially just randomly ask AI tools and actually generate quite good answers to you. I recently also did something similar, and I asked, for example, one of the brands that we service is a Japanese diaper. And this Japanese diaper is selling very hot in Japan, but this brand like us to also sell in Thailand and Southeast Asia, for example. And we ended up selling pretty well in Thailand, probably because we have a pretty good creator network. But even after we're successful, since I'm not part of that team, I asked one AI tool, why do we sell so well? Why do we sell Japanese diapers to Thailand or Thai customers so well? The answer really amazed me. And the first thing that amazed me is, first, when people want to buy diaper, so these are adult diapers. So say that, the sort of the shame factor. And people don't want to go somewhere in retail and buying adult diaper. And also selling foreign brands will probably appeal better because the data also shows that the buyer themselves are not the actual users. They're actually the kids of the older parents. So they want to buy the best for their parents. So they want to buy better things. So better probably sometimes means more expensive. And probably foreign brands a little bit more expensive than domestic brands in this case. Then that's why, because of these two big. So, I mean, a lot of these things, like you said, I mean, how should I do this? I mean, where should I go start? There's all kind of answers. If I say this, someone will argue the other way.
Yeah.
But these kind of data, sometimes psychological trends and things like that, these will never change. These are human psychology and things like that. So I would really use AI to do the research, and sometimes the answer will amaze you, and that is the right answer.
So many brands describe themselves as data-driven. It's like a buzzword for marketers this day. So from your point of view, what's make the difference? Everyone has the same batch of data. Nowadays, even have AI to help you.
Correct. I believe first it comes to the mindset of the leader within the companies, because you can almost have infinite amount of work to do with data. You can look at it as deep as possible, or you can completely not look at it and just use your gut feel. The spectrum is huge, and so the mindset is very important. That means the leader have to first figure out the strategy on such. Strategy as in, is data really important for the company? And if so, why is it important? Exactly what outcome do we expect from these kind of analysis, data collection, combining data, and whatever the action that's driven? Are these actually working? Anyone actually looking at it? What's the postmortem and all the kind of things? So these are serious mindsets that people need in order to compete in this time of day. So I think it's very important for brands to understand what's available out there, what should be done, and what could be the outcome of this, and what action will be driven from the outcome of the analysis. So, and this is the mindset that the leaders need to have. And once the leaders prove or have done this once, then they need to educate their own entire employee pool as well as their external partners and people that they work with in order everyone do the exact same thing. So everyone start collecting data and start interchanging data, for example. For example, you have a brand and you're using a warehouse, and your warehouse also have probably information of things that get shipped or broken, things like that, but they might not share the information back to you because you didn't ask, or you didn't think it's possible. What if you collect something and you exchange information with others? Then it will be sort of a data exchange. That will open up to very new opportunities as well. So the mindset have to be not just yourself as a leader, but also your entire company and also your partners. Then everyone goes stronger together.
Among all these things, what are the typical blind spots that company have when it comes to data?
I would think that one easy example would be if you want to sell, for example, housewares, for example, inexpensive housewares. You would probably use a platform that have a lot of just common people, but massive common people. So you would just immediately default to that and just sell directly on that platform. Maybe have some not as authentic content, but have a lot of content because you don't think that, sell this for $10. It's not that expensive. I probably don't need to put so much creative resource in doing something like that. And you probably never will analyze your data. You just want to sell. So you look at how much you sold today, yesterday. You just look at the end results. This is the typical blind spot that most people, a lot of the brands would have. They would just go directly to the results because that's what their boss asked them to do.
Yes.
They just need to generate. I think
and they are very platform driven as well.
Yes, very platform driven and very result driven.
Yes.
So they wouldn't put so much time into the top of the funnel and top of many funnels. So these are typical. So you can imagine they're only addressing maybe a tenth of the TAM, but normally you can address like so much more.
Because your company also do a lot of influencer marketing support for your customers.
Yes.
Will it become more like people centric rather than platform centric?
Yes. I would say that we don't think of platform as much. First thing we think of when we're serving brands to attract the audience, the consumer they're looking for, because we need to leverage creators.
Yeah.
So creators is the thing. So we would look at creators as the supply pool that own the audiences. Or the consumers that the brand's looking for. So most importantly, the first thing we focus on are the creators themselves. So regardless of which platform they are on, we seek them out. If they match the audience or the consumer profile that our brands requires, then we will go for them, regardless they are on YouTube, TikTok, Douyin, or Xiaohongshu, anywhere. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be 80-20 either. But most importantly, is within each of the social media, we need to find the specific niche that actually resonates the most with the brand.
How do you measure the influential power of a person on, a digital profile? Let me put it this way.
We look at a lot of historical data, posts they have made before, and what kind of brand they engage with, what's the sort of engagement results, things like that. Obviously, we wouldn't have all the conversion data for previous campaigns they have done with other brands, but there are some tools that we can use to have a way to get pretty close on engaging, because the engagement rate usually is pretty tied to the actual outcome, the sales, the conversion rates. So we will analyze these. We will analyze which are sort of their own traffic driving organic posts and which are sort of the more business related posts, things like that. And this is all through AI. We will look at analyzing the content, analyzing the audience, because different audience engage with the content differently. So if this post somehow with the algorithm engage with men, the other one engage with women, obviously the engagement rates will be very different. We wouldn't look at just the rates. We will look at the actual comments and results. We will understand. So depending on the brand, the brief that they give us, the target audience, if looking for men, then we will probably weed out all the female focus post and just focus on. So once we have the right data, then we will do the analysis, mainly using AI, to find which are the other influencers that would likely result in similar fashion.
It's like people look alike.
Something along that line, yeah. So in the past, we would probably use a lot of mathematical equations like regression modeling, things like that to analyze, for lookalike models. But these days, it's much easier with AI.
So how good AI is to identify fake likes or fake followers of these influencers these days? How good is the tool?
I would say it's pretty good, but there's no for sure for me, because there's no way for us to absolutely know that AI is correct in their judgment. When they say something is fake, then we don't know for sure whether it's fake or not, and we probably wouldn't spend the time to really prove whether it's fake or not. But at least we look at the results. Once we figure out when we say, I wouldn't say the fake, I would say probably the more incentivized posts, then we'll look at the non-incentivized posts, and then we do an analysis. But bear in mind that we're in the business for incentivized posts as well.
Yeah.
So at least for brands, but for creators themselves, then we do very authentic posting. So if we talk about brands, then we analyze the incentivized ones and see which ones we have the most positive comments, positive engagement, and we also have conversion data ourselves. I think by today, we probably have over 10,000 campaigns already done that we have actual result from each of the campaign, all the way include down to the individual comments for each of the posts. So have all that in our arsenal. That's super, super helpful. As now we know not just who converts the best, but what brand should seek for what type of influencer and on what platform, and what's the sort of the topic that should be used. So when we do the planning and things, we can ask AI for the right questions, and they will give us the right answers and things.
I think marketers care so much about conversions for sure. Okay, everything should be performance driven these days.
Yes.
So comparing with traditional digital advertising, which is measurable, and also influencer marketing, how's the conversion? No, how should I compare this? The weight to put on influencers and traditional digital advertising.
I guess my answer will be a little bit biased because we don't do as much traditional digital campaigns anymore. We still do, but social posting or social marketing is the core for our business now. There's certainly reasons for that because they do perform better. So I hope that answers your question a bit.
You mean
as a whole,
in terms of conversions or engagement?
Overall, yeah. I wouldn't say that we just blindly put most of our clients' budget onto social media as opposed to traditional digital. It's also a stage, sort of above the line, below the line. If you look at it sort of as a time series. So social is great for curiosity, for excitement, for awareness, that kind of thing, because it's highly relevant. It should be highly relevant, and that's at least the goal of our campaigns. Traditional digital media is more of a sort of contextual relevancy. If it's sort of contextual relevant or user relevant, these are all relevancy. So I would imagine that social is very personalized. It's very one-to-one kind of thing. And social, we can also make the message very, very unique to each person. So that's, we also have opportunity to talk in a two-way manner. So because of all these sort of unfairness with social, we usually put a little bit more time and therefore money with social than traditional digital. But traditional digital, for a lot of planners, for a lot of brands that use planners, it's the go-to-market is a lot faster, and also it's very effective if it's a not very difficult to understand kind of value proposition. If the message and the offer is not complicated, then traditional digital is much more just easier and cost-effective, and it's quick to the market. We can get the brief today in the morning. In the afternoon, it can be out on the market. But social posts, it requires a lot more. Just to think about it, if you get a brief, then you need to find 30 influencers.
Yes.
How do we find 30 influencers in a few hours? Unless you have them in your office. But most people don't have that.
The planning time will be much more
Right.
substantial.
It's people as opposed to media, digital media. Just click a few buttons and it's gone. It's done.
Yeah.
But people, you have to talk, you have to sell, you have to negotiate, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Social e-commerce, we all know that is huge in China.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Besides China, which other markets are also emerging and doing well as well?
Wow.
In this region.
Yeah. I would say everywhere, but if I were to
How about
to
Hong
rank,
Kong? What's the stage of Hong Kong?
How would I say this? Hong Kong is rather, I would say, more homogeneous than the other markets. Other markets, homogeneous as a way that the audience pool is not as diversified in a way. So it seems to be the stage is also more mature, I would imagine. For example, Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia, the average age is younger. The platforms that they use also more. They have more social media platforms. They have more e-commerce platforms. So it's very fragmented, and also population is huge. So opportunity is very big for big brands that have big budgets. That's a lot of work. But for Hong Kong, even with big brands with a big budget, first the population is smaller, even though the average purchase size is a lot bigger. But the people here, they're more similar to each other. as in terms of ethnicity, region, demographic,
Taste.
everything, age. So because of the homogeneous sort of way, it's just a more mature market because by definition it will develop a lot faster when it's easier to develop. When it's more diversified, it's just much harder. But the reach needs to be a lot bigger, which means you have to be super effective in using your budget to reach such a bigger audience. Like in Thailand, it was 70 million people, so 10 times Hong Kong.
Yes.
And average age is probably 10 years younger.
Yes.
And the type of, they have like TikTok, Shopee, Lazada, everything. And and then there's also different ethnic groups. Tons of. So they all use very, very different tones, languages, what you can use, what you cannot use, and all that kind of stuff. So Hong Kong is much easier.
Wow. What stopped Hong Kong influencers or Hong Kong marketers from using live stream commerce? We are not as active as in like Taiwan, Malaysia, other Southeast Asia countries. There are many people doing things like what happened in China 10 years ago.
Right.
But Hong Kong is still people are still a little bit conservative on this.
Right.
What makes them?
Sure. I can share my observation. I spent a lot of time observing Southeast Asia live stream or China live stream. I can talk about the sort of the stick out, the sort of extreme cases. Then it's much easier to understand what I'm trying to say. So in Southeast Asia, we specialize in AI live stream. So meaning that you can take
robot?
Yeah, pretty much. We can take your video, 5 minutes of your previous live stream, real live stream.
Yes.
If you actually have a live stream, or you can just do it do it for fake for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
We can take that and we can replicate you just using 5 minutes of content,
Yes.
and we can show you selling anything at any time in any language, 56 languages.
Wow.
So that's what AI can do. It's crazy. They do that, and not just Thailand, in Southeast Asia, they do that. Not just they don't even care who that person is, because they just want to buy something that they normally buy anyway, maybe at a discount, but it have to be trustworthy. But it's not difficult if you're on TikTok Shop and you are on a say a paper tissue, a brand that they recognize, and that's official TikTok shop for that brand. And there's a person, which is actually AI, nobody knows the AI, selling that at 5% off or something like that everyone would just buy like immediately, because people are there to buy. They're there to be entertained somehow. If you think that person looks good or something, I don't mind look at some good-looking people for 5 minutes and buy something I want anyway. So in Southeast Asia, our conversions from AI is actually higher than our conversions from live person.
Why is that?
It took us a while. First, the technology have to be mature enough, meaning that it have to look realistic enough. So once we pass that point, which doesn't require too much work, then it's about whether the culture, the people, the consumer are ready to do that. Southeast Asia, they are. So that's my point. In Hong Kong, imagine you AI'd someone and then start selling tissue paper or something like that. First, people in Hong Kong probably would never buy anything from anyone that they do not recognize, right? Because Hong Kong is so small. If someone is selling something, that person have to show up somewhere before, maybe in a show, maybe on TV somewhere, or this person did that commercial. Yeah, or even, so that person have to be someone, kind of. It doesn't have to be a very famous person, but have to have some kind of background, some kind of something I can refer to, so I know I'm not being cheated. So, but that's not a requirement in Southeast Asia. So that makes a huge difference, because you can AI anyone. You can AI. You can be a fake person, but AI of a fake person or something like that. So that's one reason. So if AI is not, the AI live stream doesn't really work too well in Hong Kong. What about live stream? Actually, live stream works well in Hong Kong. My wife, for example, go online, Facebook, every single night for, I would say an hour, but she would probably say less than that. Spend quite a lot of time watching these things, and it's entertaining because the host, she would put on clothes and she would take questions, and the people will engage with the person. That person will actually change to different clothing based on the comments and the requests. So the whole thing is interactive, and it's entertaining, and it's value adding. And actually, those clothes are from, I think, Korea, and sell at a very affordable price as well. So she almost bought every night. and it's only a few tens of dollars, so it's not very expensive stuff.
Okay.
So to her, it's really a lifestyle. It's something she want to do after work. To me, it's almost like drinking a beer after work.
Yes.
But to her, it's to buy a dress after work for 80 Hong Kong dollar or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's from Korea, and someone actually put on for her.
Yeah.
So for her, it's entertainment. I think it works, but it's just in a grand scheme. If we look at what big brands use live stream to sell, right? That's something that probably still requires some time, but this is so typical of Hong Kong. Big
Yes.
brands usually don't want to take too big of a risk because it's a small population market, but it's a big dollar small population market. So it's easy to mess up, but very.
So the behavior is there.
Yes, the behavior is definitely there. It
Just
depends.
the big brands
Might not have adopted all of them.
Yes.
Yeah, because of risk, probably.
As e-commerce ecosystem is getting so complicated these days, different markets has different platform dominate. As a brand, how can I manage all this cross-border commerce?
Right. Yeah, it's a very difficult question for anyone that actually haven't practiced, have done these, especially for multiple countries doing cross-country or cross-border trading, because each country have a very, very different set of social media platforms, e-commerce platforms, rules, laws, and everything. So just the cross-border itself would require a deep understanding, local deep understanding. That just requires time. But other requires money and time. Yeah, we probably all have some time we can probably spare, but money is very difficult to get by these days, especially when you try to raise money or anything. So it comes down to capital efficiency in a way. I guess what I mean is the best way to deploy your fund in order to reach the highest outcome at the end. And the outcome, if it have to do with conversions, then you have to think about, okay, when I convert something, is that profitable? So this capital efficiency really very quickly comes down to operational profit in a way. That's everything. So from finding the right client, providing the right service with the right people, that are usually pretty costly, and at the end be able to profit from it. And brands have to think through this entire flow. And most importantly, it's profits and how you scale the profit over time. So for us, we do a lot of cross-border because some countries have much, much higher operating costs than others. For example, Japan, Hong Kong, Singapore, these are traditionally expensive, but a lot of Southeast Asia places are a lot less expensive in terms of the operating expense. And operating expenses mostly come down from human labor costs. So it makes sense to do the homework to figure out which market do have the highest potential operating profit if you were to go into it. And that go into it meaning cross-border by definition. So this is the type of work that any brand can potentially use AI to find the answer. For example, if you're selling accessories, apparel accessories, things like that, you can literally ask AI, if I were a, say, Korean brand selling apparels, if I want to go to Southeast Asia, I want to sell online only, where should I go in order to maximize my operating profit and things like that. So this is a very simple question, but very, very difficult to answer because it encompasses so many things. It encompasses like setting up a company, understanding the import-export, and then understanding the marketing costs, the audience profile, and also the logistics and everything else. So I could probably do a lot of these work. So I guess, most importantly is to understand the capital efficiency in order to figure out the cross-border. So it's not so much of how easy it is to go viral, just the marketing piece, that's totally insufficient. So we have to understand the entire process.
Wow. So how can a brand or a company make decision between should I own the e-commerce platform, build it ourselves, or use different platform in different market?
It comes down to really two things. One is speed. Another one is risk.
Yeah.
I would say speed. Obviously, if you outsource it, or if you use a partner outsource it, then it's a lot faster, but it's more expensive. Everyone understand that. And the risk part or the ownership risk is sort of the opposite of ownership. If you want to own something, obviously you have the risk associated with it, but you likely will also save some money in the long term if you do it right. But I wouldn't think so much of the efficiency. The ownership part. The speed part is probably the first thing that you need to answer. The speed enables you to have lessons, learnings, and the learning enables you to decide whether you want to own something like that, including the risk and the return.
Yeah.
So the speed is always number one. Meaning that if you have an idea, even if you know that you can actually own that part to build it yourself, you probably still want to outsource it just so that you can learn faster to decide whether you want to own it in the first place.
Yeah, because a lot of my old clients, they think that, I build a website, I have a shopping cart. That's my e-commerce. It's not that simple, right?
That will work. That would probably save some money, but actually you spend quite a lot of time managing your store and everything else, your logistics, your customer service, and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, which platforms can potentially do it for you. But now with AI, it makes more sense to do it yourself. But this is evolving. This is definitely evolving.
Okay.
I'm not saying a .com, like your own brand.com, is always the best answer. It's likely not for if you really want to scale, but to kick off, to get some quick data as in speed, that might be a good idea too. If it's not too difficult to set
So
up.
for example, if someone want to, like as a newcomer, want to enter the Southeast Asia market, should I go for a platform or my own?
You have to drive the awareness first. You have to drive your brand. People have to know who you are, be able to trust you, be able to kind of relate you to something that they already know. And then at that time, depending on how fast you want to go to market, how big you want to be, then you can decide. I would imagine probably going the social or the platforms, the outsourcing would probably be the better way for most small to medium brands. But if you're already very famous, for example, the adult diaper example that I mentioned, this is probably already the number one, number two in Japan, and they just want to sell it somewhere else, then people probably already have seen your brand, see your products, know this brand, know this is very, very trustworthy. So in that case, you can probably even have your own .com, brand.com, without having to go to platforms, because platforms do charge some money as well. So and these huge companies are probably already public listed. They're very, very operational, profit sensitive. So you probably also want to be very conscious in the cost part.
So among all your clients, what are the more typical way to enter a new market? Platform or their own?
Platform. Yeah, platform, but not just throw everything into a platform. A good localization strategy, I would say, as well as a go-to-market strategy. That's very, very important. We usually help brands that are already proven successful in their own market first. And so we know that our client can do it. They have good products or good service, things like that. And after that, then we think about, what is your success factor in your own market? How do we resonate that with this local market? For example, if in Japan, this brand is very clean and cleanness is very, very important. But in another country, they care about pricing a lot more than clean. I mean, it's not like they can be dirty, but I mean, if it's not as clean, it's quite okay. It's maybe the fourth factor, maybe not the first factor. Then we'll have to drive the message that maybe if you buy bulk, it could be a lot less expensive. You don't have to get a discount or things like that, but you just have to buy a little bit more. So then who would buy more? Big families. So we will have to go to platforms which attract a lot of families. Things like that. So we have to sort of change the strategy a little bit in order to appeal to the specific. So that's the go-to-market. Once you're in the market, then everybody else will know about a brand. So you don't have to particularly only target family anymore. But you might have to have a different line or different even graphics and different kind of the packaging and things like that in order to appeal to non-family members at a slightly higher.
Come back to the point of view from the consumers. Sure. Okay. How do you see the consumer expectation towards the new generations of e-commerce platform? What do they expect about the brand experience and also,
right. I think it goes back to, I think the third question you had is they're looking for solutions. They're not looking for choices anymore. Sometimes they don't even want to choose. They just want, you should know what my problem is, and just help me out. Just let me know what I need to do. Just tell me directly. So as opposed to, here are 3 things that you should consider, or something like that. Just tell me one thing that I should consider. I'll just do that. They want someone to just spoon feed them, pretty much. I would imagine. I mean, it's more and more direct because the attention span. I mean, as the proliferation of vertical video, everything has to be instantaneous, instant gratification, instantly funny, instantly sad, instantly sexy in every way. Everything is instant. So
they don't have the patience.
They just don't have the patience. I don't mind you guessing wrong. They will take it as advice. They will take it as a consideration, but they just don't want too much additional thinking. I mean, I'm not talking about everyone. That's overall trend, as you asked. Yeah.
Interesting. Because the old wisdom of typical American consumerism is choices. The choice of the new generations. They always emphasize about choices.
Right.
But nowadays, consumers, they don't have patience to choose.
I would imagine the younger, the more they would appeal to instant answer, even if it's the wrong answer, they don't mind. But I guess the more mature audience will probably still be able to handle options. Options, choices are always good for anyone, even for the young. But I would imagine the younger probably have little less sort of patient in consuming content. Versus the older, and wouldn't mind to just someone cut to the chase and just give me the answer.
Wow. So you hosted a section earlier about short video.
Yes.
Which I missed it, unfortunately. What makes that trend so popular? Can you give us a little bit more information about that?
Yes. I think
short
it's similar.
Movie, right?
Short drama. Short drama.
Yes,
短剧. It's a type of drama, and it's very dramatic, and is quite short in a way. Most are 1 to 3 minutes long, or sometimes even around that. And then they usually have series, kind of like in Netflix. They have a series episodes and things like that, and they would cut all these maybe a 40-minute. Video into maybe 40 short 1-minute sessions, and then with the beginning and with the end, something like that. Very much like watching a series in Netflix, but in a very, very short time span. And because of the way that it's so dramatized, they're almost like overacting, things like that. And the topics, the themes are pretty much always about these kind of conflicts in human psychology. Basically they would exploit the sins in some way, and sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's sexy, sometimes it's just tabooish and things like that. It induces a lot of curiosity and excitement, and again it goes to instant excitement, instant gratification in a way. So that's and when people just have less and less attention in here, these vertical videos, especially when Douyin pretty much started in China, at least started this vertical consumptions. So these videos are always vertical and always short and always dramatized, and pretty much all stick to 5 or 6 different themes, variation of these themes. So these just go very, very viral internationally very quickly, and it became very, very viral in South America, North America, in rest of Asia as well. So these are a phenomenal, very fast cultural movement in some way. It's almost like games in a way that when you're on a bus, you only have 2 minutes. You don't mind spending those 2 minutes watching 2 episodes of short drama, and you can watch the rest later on. And it doesn't cost that much. And usually the first few series episodes are free, and the next maybe it costs $2 or something. You can watch 10 other episodes or something like that, or you can pay $5 to watch the entire thing. So it's almost like buying a weapon in a game. So the behavior is very, very similar to the usual digital content consumption and behavior or consuming behavior. So everything is similar. So it's very easy to adapt to. And when you look at the demographic of these, a lot of these are a little bit more mature, kind of tend towards the female gender, because a lot of these are emotionally enticing and exciting. So I guess maybe it appeals to that demographic a little bit more. But it's not extremely biased. So the reach is exceptional. And it's also great money for the media platforms that actually help to promote these videos. So imagine games have to pay large media platforms money in order to induce downloads, and these are almost always in apps as well. So it works the same way. So in the consumer and business, every way, it's just very, very similar to whatever that's in the last wave. So this become sort of the next wave very, very quickly.
So from a marketer point of view,
Yes.
what can they learn from this phenomenon?
Okay. I guess do not underestimate the power of general behavior and leverage where you can. So this kind of goes back to, okay, if you have a product you want to sell, do you want to start your own .com, or you want to go to the platforms? If people are already buying similar things on the platform and you become the number 50th tissue paper on there, then it's almost like, why not? Because people are so used to it and they don't mind having another brand to compare with if it have something unique. But that is something that you can actually leverage. I guess the lesson would be leverage. But the key thing is a lot of these short drama actually went out of business very, very quickly as well, because they have no uniqueness to everything that exists before them. So to brands, that's also a lesson that if you want to go to a very big market, also with a lot of consumer, but also a lot of competitors, you have to have some kind of unique selling point. Otherwise, you can get evolved out very, very quickly.
Okay. The key question of the day.
Thank you.
So this year, marketing posts and e-tailing posts, the theme is generate new growth.
Yes.
From your perspective, how can marketing and commerce technology unlock the structural growth in this coming year?
Okay. I think, everyone try to make incremental gain, but here I guess we're talking about like significant gain, like a 3x, 5x. That's maybe not 10x, but in Hong Kong it's very, very difficult to make it 10x. But we're talking about X's. So how do we do something like that? First, it requires a very big mindset change. So this mindset change is similar to what I mentioned earlier. As a leader, you have to start this evolution that every employee in the company also need to leverage AI, leverage data in order to find fundamental issues to things that are currently not working, and how do you compete in this market. You have to understand your consumers. You have to use AI to understand every single engagement point that you have to do, that you have with them, at least on the digital side. And digital, it means not just on your website, not just on your customer service, but on every single social platform, e-commerce platform, if you sell something. So these are all data points you need to collect. So with all these, the final goal, what you want to achieve is you don't want to just create another 20-30% of sales. You want to have something that really excites your consumer, meaning something that all of a sudden, whoa, okay, this company know exactly what I need at what time, and provided me a incentive to buy something at the time that I needed it the most. That is no-brainer because I need it anyway. And you give me a incentive to buy now. I don't care which platform. I don't care whether it's an AI avatar that's selling it, and I know it's legit because it's on your page. Then I would do it. So the excitement itself, I think, is very, very important. So we need to focus on what it takes in order to create that excitement for consumers. Because when you're exciting, you will probably buy a bottle of wine maybe 5 times higher than your normal because you're very excited. And people these days don't get excited that much anymore, especially living in a big city. Every day is just not a day. You get excited, okay, a little bit. Maybe if you're happy when someone praise you, but when as a consumer to get excited, it takes a lot of work. It takes the perfect timing, the offer, the message to the right person at the right time. So this is not easy. And in order to do that, you have to go pretty granular. And to go granular, you just don't have enough time. Leverage AI. So that's pretty much the way.
Okay, Ben, thank you for your time today. It's my pleasure talking to you.
My pleasure as well. Thank you for having me, Rudy.
Thank you.